We're going to carry on in this series, Leisure, and we'll look at this particular section in Ecclesiastes, and probably just, I've just looked at the time. I'll be quick I'll be as quick as I can. And we'll just look at the first few verses, but we'll bounce through to the New Testament as well. I guess what we're trying to do is ask that question about how do we spend our time in leisure? What does leisure mean? What do we do with it? The joy that we've got to actually have leisure. What does it mean? Is there a kind of Christian spiritual relationship with God dimension to this idea of leisure? I'm pretty late to the party. But we've just watched the last of the 3 series of the Detectorists, which I don't know whether you've ever seen it. In a bizarre kind of crazy way, the Detectorists, I wish I could say it, the guys with metal detectors, it captures in an incredible way Ecclesiastes chapter 2. It's these 2 kind of ordinary guys, super geeky, wandering around the fields with their metal detectors. It is beautifully filmed. The kind of the scenery that they're in, the time that they spend together. But at the same, it's kind of exploring their relationship, what they do with their time, the fact that they get so intensely committed to this pursuit of finding stuff. It's just beautiful. But it captures this desperate search as well. That's one of the things that it really kind of grabs hold of, this desperate search for riches. As you're watching it, the number of times they swipe over where the medieval gold is, but they don't quite get it. It's almost this contrast. On the one hand, they're desperately searching for medieval gold, but what they actually have over all of their many years of being detectorists is an encyclopedic knowledge of ring pulls. The idea that you kind of dig up a ring pull and pull out your little magnifying glass, yeah, it's a 1986 Bars Lemonade ring pull. Isn't that just, that's kind of beautiful and kind of tragic at the same time, desperately searching. But the best we find is a little girl with a beautiful little bow in her hair. The best we find is a ring pull. We search for stuff, don't we? We search for a meaning. We search for this purpose, this who are we? And in fact, our society, I think, probably has more opportunity than any society maybe in the history of the world for mass commitment to leisure. We spend our time so much looking, searching for joy, for happiness, for peace, for relaxation, for rejuvenation. But there's so much more, I think, that is going on in what we do. The writer of Ecclesiastes captures the mind of Solomon, and we'll jump to the end of our reading, and I'll just pick up a couple of verses because this is the end position really. We'll look at the end and where he gets to, and then we'll go back to the beginning and see where he starts. Look at verse 10. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet, when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. Isn't that really sad? Isn't it really sad that he's committed himself to this kind of idea of a search, committed himself to all sorts of ways of using his life, And at the end of the day, you could capture that verse 11 by saying, after all of that, he could say it was just a waste of time. But that phrase that I've just very purposefully used is the specific idea that I want us to think about this afternoon with regards to leisure: time. It's the consuming of something that passes, that we have a limited resource of, that we can never get back. It's something that we use, that we invest, that once it's used up, it is gone. How tragic that this writer gets to the end, it seems, of his committed assessment of life, and he says it was a waste of time. But jumping back now to verse 1, one of the things that I think is really important is that, and this is the way Ecclesiastes unfolds actually, it's a fascinating book. He commits himself to all sorts of different endeavors. And the one that we're going to look at is the idea of committing himself to pleasure or to leisure. Pleasure is not the kind of creation of wealth, it's the consumption of wealth. It's the time when you are using what you've gained for self-satisfaction, it would seem. Come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But they're also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind still guided me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. It's not like he just kind of took his logical brain out, put it to one side, and just ran headlong into just leisure, relaxation, pleasure, partying, etc., etc. He actually took that decision and he said, I am acknowledging that I have a limited amount of time. See what it says in verse 3. During the few days of our lives, I'm going to see what I get out of just living life, having a great, awesome, amazing time. I'm going to test that idea, is what he says. Do you know, in a way, what the Bible is doing for us here? It's kind of saying, you can do it. Someone's already done it. So have a listen before you think you can recreate something that somebody has already tested. It's a book of wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to look at something, draw the message, draw the understanding, and therefore not to just see it, but wisdom comes with the living sensibly in the light of what has been shown to you. That's wisdom. Actually, stupidity is being told something, not believing it, ignoring it, or whatever it might be, and just doing it, recreating the whole thing. That's one of the purposes of this book. It's saying, look, he's done it for you. So you don't have to do it. You can, but wisdom is listening to what he's saying. So he's having this conversation with himself. I said to myself, I'll test you with pleasure. The protagonist, Solomon, it's not like he was short of the ability to achieve that. I thought, how do I put it into context? Maybe one way to put it into context is Jeff Bezos. Pretty rich guy, fairly well up there in the kind of league table of wealth, not unlike Solomon, actually. 500 million super yacht called Koru, 165 million Beverly Hills mansion, a fleet of private jets worth 200 million. Why do you have a fleet of private jets? I don't know, maybe you get to an airport, you can't afford to wait for it to be refueled, so you take the next one. And that's kind of like the modern day billionaire idea of the Pony Express. Give me a new horse that's ready to run. 3 adjoining apartments in Central Park. And a 16.3 million apartment in the Flatiron neighborhood of Manhattan. If you've been to New York, Central Park isn't that far away from the Flatiron area. So we'll have some in both areas. That was Solomon. He had the ability to commit himself to this kind of pleasure. He had the ability to do that. It's not like he's saying, I'm committing myself to the idea of pleasure. I'm going to really blow it this weekend. I'm going to get a 6-pack. And we're going to absolutely smash it watching the rugby. He had way more. He had the ability to do it like none of us, guaranteed, in this room could even get close to. And he got to the end of it and he said it's a waste of time. But he committed time to doing it. One of the things that he realized, I guess one of the things that he realized going into it, which gives us the ability to reflect and consider, is he went into it knowing that he had a limited amount of time. Time and leisure is our society norm. But we live it as though we've got forever leisure. Either that, or we live it as though we haven't got forever leisure, so everybody had better know how well we spent it. If it isn't on Strava, it didn't happen. If it isn't on Insta, it didn't happen. I saw another one which was really quite amusing. If it didn't become a meme, it didn't happen. That's quite an interesting one. He's committing himself to doing stuff, knowing that he's limited, so that we can say, is it wise to spend our leisure like that? One of the TV programs I really love is called Car SOS. It's just great. It's these 2 idiots fixing old cars. It's just fantastic. They pull out, the best one was this kind of just a rusty wreck of a car that they pulled out of somebody's garage. What's really poignant about it, however, is why they do it. Every one of the Car OS episodes is because the person who owned the car, to do it up as their project, to make it something amazing, they'd hit mostly a health issue, which meant that they couldn't actually get close to completing the project. And one of the things that's kind of beautiful and poignant about it is they do the car up for them that they could never have done themselves, and they kind of reveal it at the end, and it's all wonderful. But man, does it really hit at just the issue here. We have so much intention, we have so many ideas, we have so little time, and even the time that we think we have might not be as much as we've actually got. I think Ecclesiastes just speaks incredibly powerfully about this idea of spending time in leisure and pleasure. You think you've got so much, but the writer says, hang on a sec, be aware that you've only got a limited time in life. You think that pleasure is going to deliver so much for you, but a bit like a project that doesn't quite get finished, it can so often seem at the end of it meaningless. That is just such a bleak picture, isn't it? Actually, what the writer speaks about Solomon doing is he commits himself to pleasure, he commits himself to work, he commits himself to all sorts of different things. And one of the things that strikes you as he kind of unpacks this idea of living, it's this: no matter what he commits himself to, he realized that there is an emptiness to it. There's a nothingness to it. He committed his time to it, but when he gets to the end of it, it's so empty. There is a key phrase which is used in Ecclesiastes that helps us to understand what is going on. It's the idea of under the sun or under the heavens. Look at verse 3. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. It is the key, actually, to Ecclesiastes. If you want to understand what the book is trying to say to you, it is that phrase. It's a phrase which says, you can live your life, and this is the heart. This is right at the very heart of how we spend our leisure time. You can live your life under the sun. Or in other words, using the shorthand of the book or the keyboard shortcut of the book, it's kind of like saying you can live your life as though under the sun is the only thing that exists. As though there is no heaven, as though there is no eternity. If you live your life under the sun, you're going to live with limited time, looking to get the best out of it, looking to find success or meaning or purpose. And when you live your life under the sun, the argument of Ecclesiastes goes, you live your life hoping, but it's always not quite enough. The writer lives his life with three different focus, I would say. This is what an under-the-sun life looks like. Firstly, it looks like living as though this life is everything. As though this is everything. That's what leisure does, can do. And we live a life of leisure as though this is everything in one of two ways. Either as though we've got all the time in the world, which is normally how it works under about the age of 30, 35. And then you tip over that age of 30, 35, and then you realize, I'm going to live my life as if I've got hardly anything of time. Both are a tragedy, because both are living. It's really helpful if your screen doesn't go off. Both are living as though time is something kind of endless or so finite, I've got to absolutely crush everything into it. That's first, under the sun. The second, under the sun, is about spending our time and finding validity for our existence. I think that is what Strava and Insta and Facebook and all of that is. It's kind of rooted in that. It's rooted in the idea that if somebody else doesn't see that I've done this, maybe it didn't happen at all anyway. I've got to find my validity. I've got to find my worth. I've got to find who I am by other people seeing that I've done it. This perception that I'm going to use this leisure time, it is the most powerful and draining, exhausting, desperate thing. Do you know what? We're at the other end of being parents. Never been a parent before to a 30-odd-year-old son. Never done it before, but I'm doing it now. It's the first time. Do you know what? When they were little, if we had Instagram now, or back then rather, I think we would be ashamed. We never did anything really exciting with them. Kind of weekends was like, that weekend different from this weekend, indecipherable. You guys live with such a pressure on you. Honestly, you do. I feel a pain for you that you might not even feel. You might not even realize that it is a pain, but you have this desperate burden to live your life as parents as though you are the most amazing parents in the world. Did you see on Instagram that woman who did clay modeling during the summer holidays? Not only that, she made the Play-Doh. Oh man, that is just exhausting. But it's validity. It's being worth something, even in our leisure. How desperate. Jimmy Carr, of all people, popped up on my LinkedIn this week. Jimmy Carr, of all people, has been incredibly insightful in this. We talk about quality of life, he says. We don't realize that actually for the vast majority of us, we are living a quality of life that compared to 100 years ago is mesmerizing and spellbinding. It is incredible. It is amazing compared to 100 years ago. The fact that somebody showers once a day is mind-blowing. We are objectively, his argument goes, we are objectively better than we have ever been. But the insightful words were this: we might be objectively better, but we are subjectively worse. How tragic. We are so much better. Our leisure time that we have compared to years ago, and I have tried, I'm not going to do it, but it would be so easy to do the when I were a lad stuff. But honestly, the leisure time that we have is so absolutely incredible compared. We are objectively so much better off, but we are subjectively so much worse off. He put an equation to it. He said our experience of satisfaction is our quality of life minus envy. Think about that. Our quality of life minus envy. Because, I don't know, you had to buy Play-Doh instead of make it. And that person on Insta just looks so much better, mum, than you. You had to put coats down to make a goalpost playing football instead of miraculously pulling out of your backpack a fully collapsible goal with netting. What is going on? Our quality of life minus envy. Thirdly, we live our lives in leisure as though it is the foundation of our relational context. How much time is of leisure? How much time do we commit to leisure? How much time do we commit to leisure as though this experience has to be projected to everybody else as though it is the most amazing time? I'm surrounded by the most amazing people. I don't feel it. But I want to make sure that everybody thinks that my relational context is incredible. And then Jesus comes along. And Jesus shatters every single one of those. How does he do it? The first thing he says is this. When he sits on the shore of the Lake of Galilee, when his disciples have been out fishing, and they are enjoying the most idyllic breakfast. It is a beautiful place. It is a stunning place. And they sat around a little fire as he cooked fish, and they talked together. It must have been the most sublime moment of relational relaxation. But what he is saying was this: that life that I lived before that ended is not everything. Eternity and life after death is a reality. That changes everything. The second thing he says is this. When he encourages his disciples to pray to their Father in heaven, by addressing him as Abba, Father, he changes the relational context that they experienced beyond imagination. No longer, he says, does your life end when you enter the grave or are consumed at the end of your life. There is an eternal dimension. And the relational context that you are able to forge by the eternal loving God, or with the eternal loving God, stretches into eternity and transforms your relational context. He says this: you can live your life no longer needing the validity of people around you. If the God of heaven validates you, then that is more than any validation that this world could ever provide for you. Those three things. This life is not everything. You can be validated by the God who created the world, not the God that you are enjoying the world from. And you have a relational context which is not broken. How does that change leisure? It means that we can enjoy, in the time that we have got, the leisure time that is available to us in such a way that stores up, as we read in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 19, where we are warned not to store up for ourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy. Can you imagine that? Can I store up a moment of leisure now which has eternal significance? I think we can. I think we can enjoy the moments now that aren't quite fully accomplished for the moments that they are, rather than the outcomes that they achieve. I can enjoy this moment because of what it is in relation to the God who created me. As though this moment, as dissatisfying as it might be, if this is everything, is worth something. I'll use an illustration. Back when I was fit, physically fit, that is, never been that kind of fit. Back when I was fit, I cycled up Mont Ventoux, 2,000 and odd meters. It was hard. It was really tough work. But it was a spiritual experience. And it was a spiritual experience because I was granted in that moment in time the opportunity to say, I am getting absolutely beat up here. I am tired. I am falling apart. But the God who created all of this never sleeps. That is a gift from God for me in that moment. Got to the top, I was blubbering like a baby because it got to the top, came back down. If I hadn't got to the top, I don't know how I'd have felt, but if I'd been granted that same experience, it would look something like this. I didn't get to the top, but the God who loves me still never needs to sleep. The God who loves me still never tires. And in eternity, I will look back on my frailty in that moment of leisure and be satisfied and joyful in the God who created everything that I was surrounded by at that moment in time. You know, this tragic picture of the detectorists looking for medieval gold. That's so tragic. Desperation, but it could be transformed if they just lifted their heads up and saw where they were and enjoyed who had created it. See, I think that's what a true perspective of leisure time is able to do for us. It tells us we're limited, but it also says, lift up your heads and enjoy your God.